membership and the benefits. You can access the same thing by going to ycpdetroit.org, the member login. If it expires, it's some quick steps to go through and renew that. Or if you want to become a new member, it's great. You can get all that started right from there. If you have any questions about membership, you're welcome to reach out to any of the leadership team with the larger badges, and we'd be happy to help you with any of those questions. With membership, you get things like access to mentorship for professional, spiritual advising, direction, access to a job board, access to smaller, max 10-person small groups, not really biblical small groups, but small groups talking about the values that we hold at YCP, creating community, fostering that Catholic identity, and then empowering us to be Catholic in the workspace. And so it's more conversations on, very similar to what we do tonight, listening to Honorable Warren, hearing what his examples are of being Catholic in the workplace, allows us to do a lot of peer sharing and learn from each other in that sort of. I think that's everything. As always tonight, we have the text line, which isn't on these cards, but it might be a small enough room that we can also raise our hand and ask for questions. If you're not comfortable doing that, I will be monitoring those texts. It's the same text number that we always have. I'll give it again right before introducing Honorable Warren, so we can take out the phones and put it in and save that. But as we begin to transition, I'd like to introduce Father Jim Grau, our chaplain for YCP, to kind of get us in the mindset with a prayer and a reflection. Father Jim.
We'll start with prayer. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. As we come together this evening, we ask the greatest disciple of all, Mary, to be with us. We ask that she intercede for us, to open our ears, especially our hearts, to receive what God wants us to receive today. She's a great disciple, both in her following of the Lord's will, but also in her love of work, her labor on behalf of her own Savior, her own Son, Jesus. And so we pray together. Hail Mary,
full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and in the hour of our death. Amen.
Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. I'm going to try to speak loudly, but if the people in the back, if you could, I'm going to start to dip down low and get quiet again, so keep on reminding me. Jason, that's you again. I introduced myself on the online version a couple months ago, but I know this is the first time in person. You might not have seen that. So my name is Father Jim Grau. I've been a priest for 7-8 years now, and I'm the new chaplain here. So I'll be giving a talk each month. And in that first talk I gave, I said that I wanted to do like a theme for the whole year, instead of like just doing whatever pops in my head that afternoon, to kind of do one theme. And the theme was this. It was from a quote. This is a reminder from St. Jose Maria Escriva, and he said this: that work is our original vocation. It is a blessing from God, and those who consider a punishment are sadly mistaken. So work is a blessing, it's not a punishment. And that, I think, is striking because we don't always view it that way. Maybe a better way, maybe just to get a little bit of why I think this is important, because I think I hear that, I hear that attitude a lot. That it's like, work is what I do so that I can make enough money so I can then go and live my real life. That I work hard so I can be free at 5 o'clock. I work hard so I can take my vacation. I work hard so eventually I get to this point where I can retire, and then I can go about and live my real life. That's not God's vision for work. That's what Jose Maria is saying, that it is a blessing. It's not something that is a punishment that we do so that we can then go and live our real life. And so what I was proposing for this year was each of these little reflections are going to be kind of like a vaccination, like a booster shot, to help us to get out of that pattern of thinking. So just one thought for the month that you can then take away and chew on to kind of help you to resist that, because it is so common. Your coworkers probably think that way. Maybe you think that way. I think that way often, right? So just a little bit of a booster shot to get us. And so where I want to start this month was with scripture, with Cain and Abel. So Cain and Abel, if you recall the story, they were the first two who were workers who actually had to plan ahead in their work. Right? Adam and Eve were just in the garden. They're like hunter-gatherers. They pick some berries whenever they need it. But Cain and Abel represent the two that had to labor for their fruit. Cain was the first farmer. Think about farming, the difference, right? You plant the seed, you have to plant it 5-6 months ahead of time. You have to water it. You get anxious about it. You don't know if there's going to be a drought. Then when the time comes, you then harvest it 6 months after you started this process. Same thing with the shepherding, which is what Abel was, a shepherd, right? There's a lot of planning ahead. That's a different type of work than just picking fruit off the tree. Now this is why I think it's relevant. This is your booster shot here. What do they then do after they get their fruit of their labor? They then offer worship. They take the fruit of their labor and they offer it in sacrifice to God. And that's what we remember about Cain and Abel, was brother killing brother. But why did that happen? Because God accepted Abel's sacrifice and he rejected Cain's. And Cain got jealous. Well, what's the difference? Abel understood work to be something that was part of his life. That it wasn't just something that he did in order to go then live his real life. And it wasn't something that God imposed on him as a punishment. And that's why Abel's intuition was to then offer the best of his flock to God. The best of his work. That his work wasn't just to sustain him, but it was also tied up with his worship. Cain, on the other hand, you get the impression, because God, it says that he offered some of the fruit. It's almost like he picked the green beans and didn't want to eat them. So he's like, well, God, you can have this part of my work. And God rejected his sacrifice. But the booster shot here is to make that connection. Your work is part of what you offer to God in worship. So think about Mass. Every single Mass that you go to, every time you go to the Eucharist, what does the priest say? The brothers and sisters, pray that my sacrifice and yours, your part of that sacrifice is you offering the fruit of your labor throughout the week. But God, throughout your work week, he's seeing what you do. What you do is part of his plan for your life. It's part of your vocation. He's invested in what you do. He notices, just like Cain and Abel. He knows you're planning ahead. He knows that there's anxiety. He knows that eventually you get to finish your work, and God takes delight in all of it. And in that moment in Mass, you're offering everything that you've done throughout that week back to God in sacrifice. So we all face this option. Are we like Cain, who doesn't make that connection and just offers him whatever? Or are you going to be like Abel, to see your work as part of this great gift that you're giving back to God? That's something I wanted to offer to you as you go about this month to think about. To see your work truly as tied in with your worship. That if you work well, if you work in a way that pleases God, if you work diligently, that is a pleasing offering. Your work is tied up with your worship. At this point, if anyone wants to go to confession, it's still raining, so I'm going to be on the porch here. And if anyone wants to go, we'll just line up along the back, and then when the confessions are done, then I'll take off. But I'll hear them as long as anyone's in line, okay? On the other hand, if you're trying to escape, maybe wait until someone else comes back in so you don't walk into the confessional. But just, you'll figure it out. But yeah, for anyone who does want to go, I'll be available just standing out on the porch here with the open.
Thank you very much, Father Jim. And part of that thought that he shares is really why YCP exists, is to help us give the tools and have that conversation that maybe we don't necessarily want to have with ourselves, but allows us the tools to figure out how are we better at giving the top 5-10% of our energy as opposed to whatever is left over. For those of you who are interested in having the questions, whether you want to text in live, for those who are watching online, or for those in the audience, the number to text in is area code 313-483-7272. Again, that number is 313-483-7272. 313-483-7272. I'll also put it in the comments online. Tonight's speaker is Honorable Michael Warren, Judge for the Oakland County Circuit Courts, appointed by Don Engler in 2002. He has rounded experiences from a former member of the State Board of Education, former board members of the Cornerstone Schools, co-creator of Patriot Week with his daughter, in addition to being awarded Judge of the Year and Judge of the Decade by the International Association of Top Professionals. Very good at what he does. In addition to being a very Catholic person who is focused on the kind of the structure of what America was founded on, and as well, and he uses that to teach while he's at Cooley Law, while also writing a book and maintaining a podcast, and staying in line with our Catholic faith. So, without further ado, Honorable Michael Warren.
Good evening. I have to get through the commercial first. So if you're interested in what I have to say, especially about Patriot Week and our country, there's a sign-up sheet here for some emails. There's a brochure, my business cards, and the book for sale with free autograph, but it's $15 for the book. We're Catholics here, or at least friends of Catholics, or you're interested. And so we're going to talk about the Trinity today. The Trinity is not the one that you normally think about, but there's a thing called the rule of threes if you happen to be from the forensic community, the speech community. So we're going to talk about three things. One is going to be my personal experience, my journey through faith. The second will be Patriot Week and how my faith is absolutely essential to the origin and the continuation of Patriot Week. And the third is my work on the court in connection with a pilot program which has been implemented recently called Reset. So if I start drifting off and I'm not on one of those three things, you raise your hand and stop me and make sure I go back to one of those three things. Okay, so who was born in 1967 or before? Okay, so we're the old people in the room. So the rest of you are the young professionals. And my mother was raised as a traditional Catholic. That would have been pre-Vatican II. And she absolutely hated it. Okay? My father was the product of a Protestant father and a Jewish mother. And he became an atheist. Relatively, very, very smart person. My mother had a personal tragedy and became a disaffected Catholic. So although I was baptized Catholic, and although they got married in the church, I was not raised as a Catholic. And from a very early age, and my mother really hates it when I talk about this, so Mom, I apologize now. My dad, in particular, would say, now, okay, so I was born in 1967. They were about 20, okay, so you can do the math. They were hippies in the 60s, right? So they said, Mike, my dad said, not my mom, Mike, you can believe anything you want. Just remember, it's all bullshit, okay? So I was an atheist really early. I mean, like a 5-year-old atheist. And I was very outspoken about it, because you can see how shy I am, with all my friends. And I grew up in the east side of Detroit in a very Catholic community, and it didn't matter. In fact, much to the chagrin of my parents and myself, I actually tried to get into the local Catholic school where all my friends went, and they rejected me. Very interesting. Back then, they had the luxury of rejecting children who were not Catholic. And so I went through the Detroit public schools until we moved out to St. Clair Shores. And then I went to school there. So I was in the public schools the whole time, fixated on my atheism. And then kind of middle school, early high school, I became an agnostic. I had done what my dad said, read all this stuff, try to figure out what you believe. And I read about the Hindus, and I read about the Buddhists, and I read about Muslims, and I read about Judaism. My grandmother was Jewish after all. And I said to myself, I don't know what to believe. It's beyond human comprehension, right? We're too dumb to understand. And so maybe the Greek pantheon is right. Maybe the Hindus are, I don't know. So I became an agnostic. And I was a very adamant agnostic. There's less agnostics than there are atheists, okay? And so I held this position all the way until I was in Ann Arbor in law school, in my third year of law school. And I usually don't go into the details, but here we are. So one day I had proposed to my wife, a very incompetent proposal, by the way, and was mulling over the rest of my life trying to figure out what I was going to do. And I was walking in a mire of all places, and there was this big stack of Bibles. I don't know why there was a big stack of Bibles in the middle of the mire, right? It was not the Catholic Bible. It was the King James Version, but I was drawn to it. And, they were on sale. So I bought the first sale thing, and I start reading, and all of a sudden I'm like, well, I guess I'm going to be a Catholic. And so I called my then short little Italian grandmother, the traditional Roman Catholic grandma, who was, of course, heartbroken that her first grandson had not ever gone to Catholic school, never did a confirmation, never did a First Communion. And I called her up from Ann Arbor, and I said, Grandma, you're going to take me to church this weekend? And she goes, Michael? I go, yep. She goes, is this a joke? I go, no, Grandma, really, you're going to take me to church this weekend. So she took me to church, and very quickly thereafter, I asked my grandfather, who was a World War II veteran, fought in the Battle of the Bulge, barely survived. It was divine intervention that he survived it all, and asked him to be my sponsor. And of course, I started telling my friends and family, and they all kind of had the same reaction my grandma did, which is that, are you kidding me? And so, there are Catholics and Calvinists and predestination people kind of look at these things a little differently, but there is no question in my mind that but for the grace of the Holy Spirit, I wasn't going to be a Catholic or any kind of Christian. Okay, so I blame the Holy Spirit for that, and I converted at or praised the Holy Spirit, and I converted at St. Ives, which is now a suppressed parish in Southfield. And I actually became on their administrative commission, and at the last gasp of the parish, I became the president. So from a lowly atheist all the way to the parish council president, that can happen. And I got married in the church. My wife, who was a Baptist, converted so that she had gone to Gonzaga Prep. I don't know if you guys know about Gonzaga Prep, but the Jesuits right out in Spokane, Washington. And so I said, will you convert with me? She said, well, I'm more Catholic than you are. I said, well, of course you are. But will you convert? So she did. And so we've raised our children Catholic. So I tell you that story because you never know where your faith journey will take you, and you never know where other people will go. So if you have somebody out there that you're concerned about their soul, you're worried about what's going on with their life, do some prayer, because I'm sure my grandmother was praying for me all the time. Do some prayers. Try to help them. They are not set in their ways. And, I am not going to say I'm Paul, right, formerly Saul, but these miracles happen. And it happened in my life. So, and it also means that you can go the other way, right? You can be a Catholic and fall off. I talked to somebody else here that's an adult convert. So it really gives you a very unique perspective when you're an adult convert as opposed to a cradle Catholic. And a lot of us, I think, tend to be more appreciative. I'm not going to say more Catholic than those that are raised in the faith, but it really gives you a sense of appreciation for the church and its tradition of 2,000 plus years of saving souls. Now, so that's the personal journey. That was the first part of the Trinity. The second part of the Trinity is Patriot Week, and it ties exactly into what I was talking about, because when you convert, do we have any adult converts? Who's an adult convert? Don't be shy. Okay, so there's 3 of us in the room. Good. So we had to go through a thing called RCIA, which are adult religious formation classes, and they tell you all about the faith, and what you're supposed to, why a Catholic is a Catholic, and all the different things. Now, one of the things that I learned about was this thing called the liturgical calendar, which is second nature to people that are born into a faith. And my parents celebrated the holidays, but in a secular way. We didn't go to church on Easter, but we had Easter eggs, and we didn't go to mass on Christmas Eve. We just had a big party in my great aunt's basement. Everybody else went to mass, but not my family, right? The immediate family. And so we learned about the liturgical calendar. So we have all these. Why do we have? First off, we have Sunday. Why do we have Sunday? Because we're supposed to stop and worship on Sunday and appreciate God and all those things. But then we have all these other holidays, and they are done in a rotation. Every 365, 66 days, we go through this process in which we stop on the hustle bustle of a day and renew our faith. So we have Holy Thursday, we have Ash Wednesday, Holy Thursday, Good Friday, Pentecost, Easter, Advent, Christmas, to stop in the hustle bustle of our day to renew our faith. And if you do any research at all, which is one of the things I had advantage of when I was growing up, you realize that all the major great religions have that, right? We just had Yom Kippur for our Jewish brethren. The Muslims have they have Ramadan and all these other kinds of days. Hindus have the same thing. Buddhists have the same thing. Again, why? To stop in the hustle bustle of your days and to renew your faith. Well, America, I like those socks. America used to have a civic calendar. We had Washington's birthday, Lincoln's birthday, Memorial Day, Independence Day, Thanksgiving, Armistice Day. Why? To stop in the hustle bustle of your day to renew your faith in our country. Okay? So we declared independence. Somebody tell me when we declared independence. July 4th. So July 4th, 1776 is almost right. It's July 2nd, 1776. We passed a resolution and declared independence. Okay? Richard Henry Lee made that motion. It got approved. We became a new country. And then 2 days later, in 2 days, they fought over this declaration, and then they announced it. So on July 3rd, John Adams, who is the leading patriot to the cause of independence, the Colossus of independence, wrote to his wife Abigail, and he said, the anniversary of this day, and he meant July 2nd, it ended up being July 4th, said, would be forever celebrated in America. We'll have parades and bonfires and speeches and games and illuminations in the sky from one end of the continent to the other now and forevermore. And he was right. We still celebrate July 4th or Independence Day. But he also said it should be a solemn day of devotion for the blessings of liberty. It ought to be solemnized. Now, I don't know about you, but the last time I had a hot dog, a July 4th party, was not a particularly solemn occasion. Okay? And we have gutted all of our civic holidays. Memorial Day. This is the day that was set up after the Civil War so that the widows and kids of soldiers would go decorate the graves of those who had given their last full measure of devotion for the blessings of liberty. And what do we do now? We're in Michigan. You go up north. You put on the barbecue and you can wear white. That's what we've done with and you can get carpet sales, right? That's what we've done with Memorial Day. And we've done that with all of our. I'm not going to go through every holiday, but we've taken Lincoln's birthday, Washington's birthday, squished them together again for appliance sales, right? That's what we've done with our civic holidays. And it all really, there's a long history about why we've gutted them out, but we've gutted them out. And now we even have Martin Luther King Jr. Day. You know, you read the newspaper, they've got Nike is selling Martin Luther King. You know, I have a dream of mattresses. You know, it's ridiculous. Okay. So I'm with my daughter. She's 10 years old. We're having lunch together, Japanese steakhouse. Just me and her. And don't ask me why I start talking about this, but I do. And she's very interested. And I say, you know, we've gutted our holidays, and it's really sad. It's a travesty. And she goes, Dad, that's wrong. We need to do something. We need to start a new celebration for America. Now, when you have a 10-year-old that tells you something like that, you have one of two choices. You can hide and pretend like it never happened, or you grab that bull on the horns, and you take it as far as you can. So I did number 2. So I said, fine. And it happened, I was a judge. I was a young judge. But I said, that's fine. Let's do it. And so we sat down and we said, okay, what are we going to do? We started scheming. You know, what? I said, you know, Leah, maybe you know, we could do a day. You know, there's a few days out there, and maybe we could make a new day. Or, you know, there's some people, they've got weeks. You know, if you think about Kwanzaa, they got this week they put together, and it's not really, you know, the Kwanzaa was invented. A lot of people think it was brought over on the slave ships. It wasn't. It was invented in the 60s by the professor that started the Black Studies movement. He made it up. And then he borrowed terms from Swahili and said every day is going to have a principle, and they used one of these terms from Swahili. And they have this ritual that they light the candles, the whole 9 yards. I said, you know, a lot of people celebrate that. There's no reason why. And she said, yes, let's have a week. I said, all right, let's give her. Now we're being real audacious. So then we're looking on the calendar, trying to figure out what week we want, and understanding that, like the liturgical calendar, we want to have days of meaning. So what can we do for America? We realized that 9/11 through 9/17 is a 1-week period. Anybody know what 9/17 is? Boy, I should yell at all of your civics teachers and history teachers. It is the anniversary of the signing of the Constitution. So 9/11 is the anniversary of the terrorist attack. So we got those 2 great anchor dates, and we fill them in by celebrating our founding first principles from a Declaration of Independence on each day, a key document in speech that embodies that, founding fathers and other great patriots, and flags from our history. So we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that when any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it and to establish new government, laying its foundation such principles and organizing its power such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Those words from the Declaration of Independence were revolutionary in 1776, and they remain revolutionary today. And notice a couple of the key things I said there. There's a Creator. He's endowed unalienable rights in people. Does anybody want to take a guess at what unalienable means? This is why we had Patriot Week. So unalienable means, if you can alienate, I should pick on Sylvia. Alienate means what, Sylvia?
Aggravate.
What was that?
Aggravate.
Aggravate?
Well,
No. Means you can sell it. It's an old-fashioned term, bless you. You can alienate your property, you can alienate your labor, you can sell it or transfer it. So if it's unalienable, you can't. So where do our rights come from? Our rights come from God. They're born in us. You can't give them away. Government doesn't give you the rights. The purpose of government is to protect your rights. Okay? It's a fundamental understanding based on Judeo-Christian beliefs. And we're the only country in the world that's founded on that belief. Only one, ever. And that's the keystone, the critical part of our freedom and liberty is that understanding, which most people don't understand. So from the Declaration, we have the founding first principles of the rule of law, unalienable rights, limited government, the social compact, equality, and the right to alter or abolish an oppressive government. That's only 6. You say, well, that's only 6. How do you have one for every day? Well, we've had such a struggle with equality in our country. We have one for gender and one for race. So we have 7. We celebrate founding fathers that embody that, and not just fathers, mothers and other patriots like Martin Luther King Jr. for racial equality, Susan B. Anthony for gender equality, Thomas Jefferson, connection with unalienable rights, Madison in connection with limited government. Key documents and speeches that embody that, like the Declaration of Independence, Constitution. And then my daughter, who's a genius, said, Dad, we need to get the kids excited. Let's have fireworks. I said, oh, Leah, you are right. We need to get the kids excited, but fireworks, it's expensive. You got to go outside. It's kind of taken. She goes, yeah, you're right, Dad. Let's have flags. Kids love flags. And so we have 7 different flags from our history that embody those. We have been recognized by the U.S. Senate unanimously 2 years in a row. I figure if the U.S. Senate can agree on anything unanimously, it must be pretty good, especially in today. And I mean, literally this year. That was 11 years ago when Leah pounded on the table. So we've had 11 Patriot Weeks. Been recognized in 15 different states. We've had events, not just in Michigan, but many other places. We have over 130 TV shows or episodes. We have building that podcast that he talked about, Patriot Lessons, American History and Civics. We have lesson plans. We've had parades, paloozas, picnics, festivals. Presided over a gubernatorial debate last cycle in Michigan. Lots of panel discussions and guest speakers, et cetera. So it's very grassroots. It is very much rooted in what America is about, but also it's very much rooted in what people want to do. So every year it changes. This year we went pretty much virtual. We had a Patriot Academy, and every day we went over the themes of the day. So that is a way that my Catholic faith, not only is my Catholic faith obviously define my life and Trinity prong number 1, but Trinity prong number 2, it's also defined my life in connection with, Patriot Week would never have happened, but for the first prong, right? We heard the Father talk about making sure that your work is rooted in your faith, and I would just add to that your extracurricular activities should be rooted in your faith as much as you can as well. So that's an area, and this is a labor of love. Obviously, it takes a lot of time, a lot of energy to develop that. And so if for some reason you're not able to bring your faith into your work environment, then look outside of your work environment, and you can do marvelous things even if you're not able to, for some reason, do that in your work environment. Although I think you should be able to do it in your work environment, just like you said. Now, the third prong of the Trinity I want to mention is how I've integrated my faith into probation. So I am an Oakland County Circuit Court judge. What does that mean? That means I have jurisdiction over all of Oakland County. There's 20 of us judges that are circuit court judges. Of the 20 of us, 13 of us are considered general jurisdiction judges. The general jurisdiction judges have felonies, and we have civil cases involving $25,000 or more. And if you can think of a civil case, we got it. So slip and falls, automobile accidents, medical malpractice, wrongful death, Civil Rights Act. And then on the criminal side, anything that's a felony. So anything that you can serve 2 years or more in prison. So if you're talking about drunk driving, third offense, it's a 5-year felony. Unarmed robbery, passing bad checks on purpose, rape, armed robbery, murder. I have all those cases. Okay? And I've tried over 350 jury trials. I have sentenced countless defendants. I literally cannot count how many. I'm sure we could, but it would take a long time. But thousands and thousands of people. And one thing that really struck me relatively recently, unfortunately, is that, I knew this and I tried in different ways to address it, was that we have these people that come before me as criminal defendants who have no hope. They don't respect themselves. They don't respect society. They don't respect the law. They see no value in themselves and other people and the law, and therefore they abuse themselves with drugs, a lot of substance abuse, alcohol, heroin, cocaine, meth. It's a bunch of things I can't pronounce that are chemical substances that they make up in a laboratory, and I'm like, oh, no, so I make somebody else say the word. And assaultive behavior, domestic violence, like I said, armed robbery, carjacking, kidnapping, child abuse. Okay, I don't want to depress. Embezzlement, there's all kinds of stuff. Some of those people have to go to prison, and I never see them again because they go to the Michigan Department of Corrections, they're in a prison, they're in a different system, they go on parole. I don't have anything to do with that, okay? Some of them get probation. And so that means they might go to jail for a little stint. That might mean that they don't go to jail, but they could if they violate my probation. It might mean they go to jail for a long time, up to a year, and then they have probation. Lots of different ways that this happens. And almost every single one has some challenge. And we, as a system, I sentence them, and then we have a probation department that monitors their progress. And I order certain conditions, like don't drink. If you're a drunk driver, you should not drink. And you should be tested for alcohol and tested for drugs. And I want you to do some community service. And I want you to write an essay about how to the destructive impact of illicit drugs use on your life and society, things like that. And I think I've been relatively successful in changing some people that way. But then you'd give some people these awesome breaks, right? You say, let's say they're an 18-year-old and they do a terrible crime. But I have flexibility for certain age groups to be able to say, that's not going to count on your record. All I need you to do is successfully complete probation. So I'm going to make you do a bunch of community service. I want you to write these essays. I want you to stay in the straight and narrow path, take your drug test, and then they go commit another horrible crime. And you're like, well, what is going on here? Why did you do that? Okay, very frustrating. So as I've been developing as a judge, and as I alluded to earlier, a lot of these people don't have respect for themselves or respect for others. And that comes from the fact that I think our culture, well, let's start at the top. Who watched the debate last night? Okay. How many of you were proud as Americans when you were done watching that debate? Okay. We live in Catholics are completely anti-cultural, right? I'm so proud of you guys. You're the salt of the earth. You're out here on an evening in the middle of a pandemic so that you can learn something and grow and make fellowship. That's awesome. And I mean that really, that's awesome. And there's a lot of people that don't have that. And we have a culture that's very secular, does not value any kind of religion. We have a toxic media environment. Social media, and I do all these things. I get on TV. I have all these social media platforms, et cetera. So I'm participating. I kind of see what's going on. So who's listened to Jordan Peterson? Knows who he is. Oh, goody. We got some Peterson fans. All right. So I'm a runner. I'm running, listening to this guy's got long form podcasts. They go 3-4 hours long. And he starts talking about problems in our society, and some of them involve the fact that people don't value themselves. They don't understand our culture and the heritage that we have. And so I've massaged this quite a bit, but the fact of the matter is that people don't believe they have a divine spark in them, right? I know there's some theological fights over divine spark. Just live with it for a moment. That there are people born of God. Remember when I started and I said Trinity number 1 was that all of a sudden the Holy Spirit came and found me? Okay. Trinity number 2, we are children of God. We are endowed by the Creator. Okay. It all goes the same direction. If you believe that you're a child of God, or that you at least have a divine spark in you, then you know that you can salvage yourself and change who you are at any given time and be a constructive person for yourself and for society. And if you don't believe in that, if you're a nihilist and you believe that we're just kind of some, scum that happened to develop in a certain way and it's all pointless and meaningless, then it doesn't matter if you go out and you shoot a whole bunch of people and shoot yourself in the head because it's all pointless anyway, right? Those are kind of the extremes. And there's a lot of people playing on one end because they have lost a grounding, an understanding of themselves as people that are worthy of love and worthy to love. They don't believe that they have a sense of divinity in them, that they don't have a purpose or meaning in life. Now, one of the things that Peterson explained to me, explained to the world, is he has this program called the self-authoring program. And what he did when he started this program was he's a college professor at the University of Toronto and psychologist and psychiatrist. And people would come in, their students, and he would say, okay, I want you all to envision your best future. Everything in life goes right. Everything. Family life, your job, your education, everything. Where are you going to be in 5 years? You write that down. Okay. Now, write everything that could go wrong. Take your minor little character flaw and exaggerate it so it's the absolute worst. Okay? You like to drink, you've become a drunk. And maybe go to prison because you're a drunk driver and you hurt somebody. And you fight a little bit with your girlfriend, so you become abusive. And blah, blah. And okay? So you got heaven and you got hell. And he says, okay, make the plan, visualize what you need to do so you're up here and not down here. A 1-hour exercise for his students. He's a real scientist. They went and they studied. They did all the retrogression analysis and figured out that the people that did that program in his class had a 33% higher graduation rate than the kids that didn't. So I'm sitting here going, I'm such a dummy. I have these people doing community service because I'm hoping they'll get connected to the community and see some self-worth. I have these people writing essays, so they have to reflect. And I got a lot of people that wrote essays that I never had to think about the rule of law before. Judge, I never really thought about why property rights are important. Okay, and I believe them. Which is kind of sad that they never thought of that, and so they were forced to write about it. But it wasn't a program, and it wasn't one that was in-depth and self-reflective. So I said, I'm going to still make them do some community service, and I might have them still write an essay or two, but now I'm going to make this program called a reset program, my wife's ingenious idea, where we would have them, within the first 90 days of their probation, do this analysis. Best possible future, worst possible future, what are the 8 concrete goals that I can set out to go towards the best and avoid the worst. And if you're a by system, that might not be, I'm going to become a world-renowned brain surgeon. It might be I'm going to be sober. I'm going to have a house to live in. I'm going to have a friend that I can trust that's not a thief and is not making me self-destructive. I'm not going to beat up my girlfriend. I mean, some very, very, what we might think are very low resolution or not so obvious goals, very important for them to change their lives around. So much to my shock, because I said, I'm gonna pitch this, and I'm sure the bureaucracy will fight me tooth and nail because I need help to do this, and I'm sure that this is going to be a real struggle. So I pitched it to my colleagues, and I got several of my colleagues say, yep, let's do it. I was really shocked. Then I go to the probation department. I say, what do you think about this? They go, my God, this is amazing. This is great. I said, well, do you do this? She says, I don't think we do, but I'm going to give you all the probation materials that we have, and you can look through them, and maybe we do. So it's like this big, right? So I go through. There's a half a paragraph Well, maybe it's a half a page. Half a page that kind of touches this on this huge binder. I go, no, you're right, you don't do it. She said, okay, we're going to do it. My probation liaison, who's a saint, says, I will go take this, because I have to create this packet. It's really thick. I said, I will take it to each defendant individually and make sure they fill it out and collect it for you. Call Oakland University. What do you guys think about this? Oh, that's a great job. We want to do a pilot study to see if this thing works. Of course, right then, the pandemic hits, right? So I'm still doing it. And one of my colleagues said, you know what, I don't have those hardened felons like you do. I have juvenile kids that really could use this because they're 14, 15, 16. We can, get it at the nub here and save some kids from a lot of pain. So she made it for that group. She took my materials and referred it. So that's just one way. And I don't go to the probation department and say I'm a converted Catholic, and I don't tell them any of that. I just say Peterson did this study, and they go genius, right? But I am positive I would not have gotten there but for my faith. Now, I'm 53, and I don't know what the future holds, but I suspect that if I'm on the earth much longer, that my faith will give me a the fourth thing. And hopefully with each passing year or set of years, my faith will bear some fruit in other ways that I could never even think of today. Because back in 1991, I would never thought any of that was going to happen. And even just a couple years ago, I would not have thought about the Reset program. And a few years before that, I wouldn't have thought of the Patriot Week program. So I think that your faith has a tremendous potential to bear enormous fruit in your private life, your extracurricular life, lack of a better term, and and in your work life. Even if you're in a position like I am, where I'm bound by the law, I'm surrounded by a secular society. They don't want to hear the word. I do the Pledge of Allegiance in my courtroom. It says under God. And people freak out. Oh my gosh, he's making us do the pledge. I was like, I invite you to do the pledge. You don't have to. I'm not going to throw you in jail if you don't. And actually, a lot of people, there's a hunger out there. Most people, like 99.9% of the people I started at, came up to me at the bench and said, I haven't said the Pledge of Allegiance in 30 years. Thank you. Keep doing this. That came out of Patriot Week. So I do think that the society is hungry for a rebirth and a renewal based on our values. And it's a matter of just standing up and fighting for them in a smart and intelligent way. And with that, God bless you. God bless America. And text your questions, and we'll go from there.
All right, thank you very much, Honorable Warren. The number to text is 313-483-7272. I've been writing them down as they came in. I promise I wasn't mindlessly on Facebook in the corner there. There's quite a few different. There's quite the array of questions, and I know we're streaming live. If there's a question you don't want to answer, just please text. We'll move on.
All right.
This first question comes from someone in Detroit. Did your view of the law change as your view of religion changed? So you were writing that.
Yeah. So I would say that. Okay. So when I was young, I was a history major at Wayne State University. Honors history major. Learned a lot about the Constitution. Learned a lot about the Founding Fathers. Thought I knew it all, and every time I read these things about religion, I said, that's not important. How do I get to this Declaration of Independence thing and constitutional rights without having to worry about the religion aspect? And quite honestly, I think I was just lying to myself, because the reality is you can't get there. I mean, it's in the text. When it says, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, they're endowed by their Creator and they talk about nature and nature's law, and that's repeated not just in the Declaration, but in the Constitution it says the blessings of liberty. You can't have a blessing without a higher being, providence, all those kinds of things. So I would say that my understanding of the fundamental roots of our Judeo-Christian society, that I could be honest about it once I accepted Jesus as my Savior, right? Because then I wasn't fighting as an agnostic or as an atheist. Because when I was an atheist or agnostic, I loved the country. That didn't change. But if you don't have that underlying foundation of a Godhead, it's all just whatever people want. That's in the end what it is, right? Which is why when Nietzsche said, God is dead, we can do anything, you can kill your own father, he was right, because if you don't have an underlying moral structure, then it's all just whatever people want to do. And that's how you get to the Soviet Union, that's how you get to Mao Zedong and tens of millions of people getting slaughtered, that's how you get to Cambodia, and Vietnam. They didn't have a belief in a higher being, they just believed in what they believed in. And they were going to force that utopia on Earth, no matter how many people died. Right? That's what they did. So I think it did fundamentally change my view in connection with the law.
I've got a question here from someone in Dallas that said, you mentioned having, if you can't be Catholic or religious at your workplace, extracurricular. What extracurricular do you find most beneficial in rooting your faith, or is it just a matter of in your workplace bringing that to whatever?
Well, so my extracurriculars, Patriot Week is the biggest one. And Patriot Week, again, we talk about inalienable rights and the Creator, and we do not shy away from that at all. The other thing that I haven't been nearly as involved in as I was, but you heard my intro, was Cornerstone Schools, and that. Anybody know about Cornerstone Schools? Okay, so got a few nods. So it used to be a 100% non-public, in other words, a private school, supported about 2/3 by donors, 1/3 by tuition. And over time, it evolved, and I was there when it happened, into charter schools. And but it's still very much rooted in this ethic that we hold dear. And so that's another area. Education, I think, just Catholic education or education that's rooted in those things. I think there's I have a friend that's in the prison ministry. There's so many things that you can do a soup kitchen. You could build houses for poor people. I think we forget, right? We forget that Christians and Catholics in particular, started hospitals. We were the first people that had these charitable institutions. Despite the fact they wanted to feed us to the lions, we were helping society. And so anything that's rooted in alleviating poverty and helping people out, the substance abuse places, the treatment centers, all that is, I think, you could easily find that reflective of your faith.
I've got two questions here that are kind of similar, and then I've got a lot of questions that are about last night and the general attitude of come from Washington, D.C. But this one, there's two different questions that I think are kind of headed in a general direction. First one comes from Orlando. It says, have you ever delivered a verdict that was more religious than lawful? And the second one says, is it possible to have a verdict that is religious if the country is rooted in Judeo-Christian values?
Okay, so let's use some just precise with our terminology here. A verdict is a ruling about whether or not someone is guilty or not guilty, or whether or not a plaintiff is entitled to the relief that they seek. Most of the time, a verdict is rendered by a jury. Not always. I can have a bench trial, which means that there is no jury. I took an oath to follow the law and to follow the Constitution of the state of Michigan and to the federal government. So there have been times when I have a personal disagreement about whether or not something should be illegal or should be allowed, and I am bound by the law, and I have followed the law and not taken the law into my own hands. And maybe some people would say, well, that makes you a bad Catholic. And I guess my retort to that is that that's inevitable, which means that no Catholic can be a judge. And we have, a majority of Catholic Supreme Court justices right now, and I think we want that. So to the extent that we want to have Catholics part of the judiciary and part of the legislative process, then sometimes you have to do things that you might not personally agree with. It might not be necessarily the position of the church. And all puns intended, God knows there's a lot of Catholic politicians out there that certainly don't follow the faith. So if what they're getting at is, have I disregarded the law because because of the conscience? The answer is no. But there's a lot of flexibility in the joint, so to speak. So, for example, for sentencing, I have broad discretion in most cases to render a sentence. I'll give you one sentence I don't have discretion on. For example, is somebody has a gun, they commit a felony, they have to go to prison for 2 years straight up for that gun charge. Okay. Is that just under Catholic doctrine? I don't know. I don't worry about it because I have to do that. Someone commits first-degree murder in the state of Michigan, they go to prison for life. No possibility of parole. Is that just under Catholic doctrine? They could go and have a conversion in their jail cell or their prison cell and try to, doesn't matter. That's the sentence I have to render. Okay. But other sentences, for example, a drunk driver, a armed robber, I have this wide range of sentence possibilities, and I think I'm not a big legal realist, but I think it's unrealistic to think that my perspective in the world in general doesn't somehow affect the sentence that I render. And so mercy is a big part of being a judge, and I'm really a law and order kind of guy, so I have to keep reminding myself, don't forget about the mercy part and the forgiveness part. And I think so it does pop into play. It does, and especially for first-time offenders and people that just need a break, and it's not a character, it's not a repeating kind of thing. I think it's true for most people, but you're much more likely to be merciful and charitable in those circumstances.
We've got another question here. Has anyone ever contacted you after maybe completing one of the 5-year plans or writing the essay saying, you were the person that got me straight in here 10 years ago, and now that it's...
Yes, there's probably, in my experience, there's nothing better than kind of the random encounter with somebody that you've sentenced that actually appreciates their sentence, right? Because normally when I'm walking down the street and somebody says Judge Warren, you get all kinds of things that go in your mind. But I'll give you an example. I was we had a county commissioners meeting for some reason, and I think I got an award or something at the meeting, but so I went and I got the award and I walked off, or I was presenting the bicentennial of Oakland. I can't remember exactly what it was. And I walked off, and then I was alone in a hallway, and a young lady stopped me, and she said, Judge Warren. And I went, okay, here it comes, here it comes. And she said, you sentenced me 5 years ago, and I really hated your guts. You put me in jail, and I was so mad at you, and I love you. You changed my life. You got it through my head, and now I help people rehabilitate, and it wouldn't have happened if you hadn't put me in jail at that precise. That was exactly what I need. She gives me this. She said, can I hug you? I said, of course. So that does happen. You usually don't get fan mail, but on occasion you get something like that. Yes.
We've got a question here from someone from one of the Illinois, and they said, is voting as simple as giving a single issue ticket, or how do we weight all our Catholic values?
Oh, that's very interesting. So just as a judge, I'm nonpartisan. I'm not allowed to endorse particular candidates. So I would just say that you should follow your conscience and evaluate each candidate for what they present. And Michigan is notorious for jumping between different parties. And I see that there's a lot of benefits to that. I think blindly just selecting a party probably is not the best thing to do, regardless of what party you might have an affiliation for. So my suggestion is learn as much as you can about each candidate and vote your conscience in connection with each candidate.
All right, we're running short on time here, so I've got one. I'm going to try to pick one last question. I'll make it an easy one. Other than the America Survival Guide, do you have any book recommendations?
I would say that if you haven't read the Federalist Papers, you should. If you haven't read Common Sense by Thomas Paine and The American Crisis, which was his set of pamphlets, which were written during the Revolution to inspire the troops to stay fighting, that those are great books. Paradise Lost is also a great book, and Moby Dick is a great book. But if you're looking for things, it sounds like maybe they're just teasing me about the American Survival Guide. But if you're looking for political stuff, Federalist Papers and Common Sense, and if you can read Patrick Henry's "Give Me Liberty or Give Me Death" speech. It's an amazing speech. My daughter has memorized it. We have a fundraiser every year. They call it the Patrick Henry Dinner. And she gets all dressed up in the garb and delivers that speech, and it's a showstopper every time. It's not that long, so those would be my recommendations.
All right, we just got one last question. Actually, it's a good question. I mean, they're all good questions.
I hope so. All these other questions have been terrible.
I've got 50 questions tonight, and it's been very difficult to try to pick and find ones that are on topic that I can lead up and follow with another question. But this question is, says the Declaration of Independence says the purpose of government is to protect our unalienable rights. Thomas Aquinas says in his treatise on law that the purpose of government is to habituate citizens to virtue. How do you recognize declarations with the teachings of Thomas Aquinas?
That's a great question. The founders, when they were writing in 1776 at least, believed that you could not have freedom unless you had a virtuous public that was well grounded in the Judeo-Christian ethic. It was presupposed that if you were going to have a republic and the people were in charge and not a king or an oligarchy or some kind of caste system, that the people that were going to be involved as political actors had to be virtuous. Madison kind of gave up on that and said, we're going to have these factions anyway, and so we're going to set up these checks and balances, separation of powers, and limited government. But with the Declaration, I don't think there's any contradiction there, that they go hand in glove. That I'm going to go back to my reset program. If you believe you're a child of God and you have a divine purpose, then that leads you to virtue, which leads you to being able to be a defender of freedom and liberty.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Awesome.
As a reminder of what exactly we're working under, and I can't put it on the bench, but this is a place as a reminder of
that's great.
The ultimate example to work for.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much. And for closing remarks, I'd like to introduce you to our Director of Marketing, Felicia Damchek, who will fill us in on the rest of the day.
Thanks, Nick, and thank you everyone so much for being here today. This is a great turnout. It's really wonderful to see so many people back at these in-person events. I would also really like to thank Honorable Warren again for your wonderful presentation. It was really great to hear from you on your personal experience and your journey of faith, especially when you mentioned that you never know where your faith journey or anybody else's might take them. That really connected with me. I've prayed and seen coworkers transform, so it's been amazing. And also just reflecting on how your faith impacted your work on Patriot Week, and with the Reset program, it was really inspiring, so thank you for that. Our recording, it's live right now, so it's going to be accessible on YouTube. We'll be sure to share it with everybody on Facebook and email as well. And we also like to thank St. Joseph Shrine and Canon Stein for hosting us today. Appreciate the use of their facilities and especially being able to, again, gather in person. It's always appreciated, and we're excited to continue doing this. Thank you very much to our generous sponsors, Alliance Catholic Credit Union and Penske, for continuing to support our organization and everything that we do. And our next events coming up are our Executive Speaker Series. It's going to be October 28th. And then we also have a panel discussion coming up on November 18th. The details for both of those are still in the works. Given the times, it's pretty understandable. So keep an eye out for emails, Facebook events, all of that. We'll have some more information pretty soon. Now, before we close, I did want to just touch on one more thing. So Nick started the evening sharing a little bit about YCP membership and how all that works. We do have some flyers that are in the back on the tables. Please feel free to take one if you're interested in learning more about YCP membership. He touched on a lot of great things, but I did want to speak about forums. So Nick mentioned kind of a small group opportunity. So when everything shut down, obviously people were still kind of yearning to connect, and YCP as a national organization introduced these things called forums. It's an opportunity to go deeper in conversation and to focus on meeting personal, professional, and spiritual goals. So we're trying to set up these groups. We're trying to set up one group of male, one with female, so they are gender specific. We meet monthly and just continue to encourage each other to meet those goals. So again, it's a YCP member benefit. So if you do become a member, you also have the opportunity to join one of these forums. So if you would like more information, look out for the flyers and head to our website for more info. And with that, we will close in prayer. Everybody should have a prayer card with our prayer to St. Joseph Worker, our patron saint. So all join in. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. St. Joseph, by the work of your hands and the sweat of your brow, you supported Jesus and Mary, and had the Son of God as your fellow worker. Teach me what work as you did, with patience and perseverance, for God and for those who God has given me to support. Teach me to see in my fellow workers the Christ who desires to be in them, that I may always be charitable and forbearing towards all. Grant me to look upon work with the eyes of faith, so that I shall recognize in it my share in God's creative activity, and in Christ's work for our redemption, and so take pride in it. When it is pleasant and productive, remind me to give thanks to God for it. And when it is burdensome, teach me to offer to God in reparation for my sins and the sins of the world. Amen. Thanks again, everybody. Hope you have a great evening.